Hey y'all, and welcome back to Confederate Shop's YouTube channel. So if you're a follower of my shop, then you know that I've been gone this past week from the 10th through the 17th. I was on vacation with my family, and I was able to recharge and get some good reading done and enjoy some time with family. So if you placed an order between the 10th through the 17th, your order went out on the 17th, so you should have it soon. I sincerely appreciate everyone's patience with me with this. And yeah, let's get into it. I wanted to talk about a few things. I brought a big stack of books with me on vacation. I got a chance to do some reading as always. And I reread one of the books that I featured months and months ago on my YouTube channel called Win in the Course of Human Events. Now, this hidden gem video is not about Win in the Course of Human Events, but I wanted to mention it because it is such a critical book. I read it about 15 years ago when I was in high school, and I'm reminded when I reread it this past week how important of a title it was. This is a book that my father would always recommend to people who would come in the shop and they wanted a different perspective on the war, or they had been trained in the typical narrative of the war and wanted the Southern perspective. And Charles Adams, the author of the book, is just a great person for this because he's a Northerner. He was raised in Northern schools from Northern perspective of the war, that it was all about slavery, you know, the typical righteous cause myth of the war. And he comes from the standpoint of showing how the war was very economic, how the Republican Party of the North really had many, many business interests as far as when it came to the war, with Northern industry, with taxes, and with tariffs. So he shows a great deal of evidence towards that. Plus, he's a good writer and he cites all of his materials. So if you don't have that book, Win in the Course of Human Events, I highly recommend it. And I mention all this because in this week's newsletter, we have a piece of that book as featured as our exclusive essay of the week. So the book will be listed there in my newsletter as well. But this hidden gem book that I'm featuring this week is one that I did months ago as well. But I re-brought it to the beach with me because it's a good read. I really enjoy it. It's a good refresher every once in a while because Ash is a great writer and he really puts things into perspective. It is a Southern view of the invasion of the Southern states in War of 1861 to 1865. So Ash is a lot like Jubal Early, Sam Watkins, Jeff Davis, Raphael Semmes. They wrote narratives after the war presenting the Southern perspective or the Southern cause of why they fought. Now, modern academia calls all of this the, quote, righteous cause myth. You've heard this term quite a bit, but essentially what they're saying is that all of these Southerners that fought during the war, that served politically in the war or militarily in the war, they somehow all came to sow this great lie to the posterity, to the future of why they fought. Essentially, they call the lost cause propaganda because essentially they think it's a lie. But it's really not a lie because people like Ash, Captain Ash, who wrote this book, A Southern View of the Invasion, makes a really good argument as to why they fought and steps leading up to the war. And that's really what I wanted to talk about because he has a chapter in this very short book that is not very many pages. He's got a chapter called Steps Leading Up to the War. And really what he focuses on is gives a deeper explanation as to why a handful of the Southern states, a few of the Southern states, mention the issue of slavery in their secession documents. Now, many of you know that some of the Southern states, particularly like South Carolina, the first state to secede from the Union, mentioned slavery within their ordinances of secession. Now, there's a good explanation for this, and I've covered this in my previous videos, but Ash goes in a lot more in-depth with the rhetoric that was going on, rhetoric that was coming out of the North, rhetoric that was being spread throughout the South, that really created the animosity between North and South when it came to the issue of slavery. There was Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. That was one piece that inflamed the Northern abolitionist movement to promote race war and hatred throughout the South. But one book in particular, and what Ash talks about in great detail, is Hinton Helper's book, The Impending Crisis. Now, what these things were were propaganda put out by the abolitionist movement. And the abolitionists, they were not saying that they needed to do away with slavery in a practical, social way. No, they were trying to incite race war and murder within Southern society. And see, this is exactly what is felt within those Southern secession documents, those few Southern secession documents that mention the issue of slavery. It's outraged reaction towards this abolitionist movement that wanted to incite race war and murder within Southern society. So he goes in a great depth, Captain Ash does, with steps leading up to the war in this chapter, as far as the propaganda coming out from the North and the radical abolitionist movement that really fired up the Southern hearts to not want this kind of rhetoric and propaganda within their society. Now, he also goes in depth in all of the other issues. The right of a state to secede, secession. He talks about Abraham Lincoln. He talks about Lincoln and the Constitution. He talks about nullification crisis that took place before the war. Talks about all of those constitutional issues. But more in depth too, he does go into great detail with the ratification of the Constitution, because specifically New York, Rhode Island, and Virginia, when they ratified the Constitution, when they entered the Union, made it specific within their documentation that they were sovereign states that held that sovereignty until it didn't suit their needs anymore. Now, he references all of these things in his book. He references a lot of historical data too. So this is a great book to have on your shelf, and it's going to be on sale. So that's why it's my hidden gem of the week. And I just think it's a fantastic one to have on your shelf if you don't already. You can also purchase a copy and give it to a friend in your SCV camp or UDC chapter or any other historical organization that you are a part of. This is just a fantastic book. So get it today on in our newsletter, the discount. Get it on sale this weekend. And as always, thank you so much for supporting my work here at ConfedereShop.com. You all have a wonderful day.